want to welcome you to this next edition, changes that happen about every 3 years. And so this week we're going to start with talking about the changes that happen around age 3. And so with that, I want to say this is a hugely helpful book, and I know it's backwards for you guys because everything is mirrored on Facebook, but this is You Are Your Child's First Teacher by Rahima Baldwin Dancy. And this is a really good primer for early childhood. I know some people don't love it, some people do love it, but I have to say I fall back on this one a lot, and actually it's kind of tabbed up now because my daughter, who's 16, is reading parts of it for embryology for the development of the early childhood. So it's a really good book for that. I tend to buy this one for people that I know that aren't Waldorf minded that are getting pregnant, because everybody else is going to give them a whole bunch of other sort of more mainstream parenting books that don't sort of take the child's development really into account when it comes to what they're talking about. So so I like that book. I also like Heaven on Earth by Serafina Oppenheimer. I think there's some great chapters in there for early childhood. And I really like the Waldorf Online Library. I also want to say that sometimes you'll see, you won't see it mentioned as the changes at 3. It might be changes between 2 to 3 or 3 to 4. Or you might see the changes at 9 to 10 or the changes at 12 to 13. So when I say 3-year cycles, I'm talking in general, we're looking at about 6 months on either side. And the changes that tend to be really intense for about 6 months or so, and then they tend to level off. And I don't know, I was sort of laughing about this last night. I thought, is it because we get used to it, or because we're acclimated to parenting that age better, or what is that all about? And it might be a little bit of both. So with that, let's go ahead and get started on this. So I like this quote from Steiner. He says, "We have to be aware that we cannot influence the child with words of advice or by setting rules, but only by what we do in the child's company." And I think that is immensely important. I think that we forget, and we can't forget. We have to really be aware constantly of sort of what we're doing and how we're presenting ourselves. And it starts when they're really little. It starts, really in pregnancy and from beyond. So I want you to sort of think about that when you're working through your parenting. And I know that that's like a huge, heavy burden. And I get a lot of messages from moms that tell me how worried and frustrated they are because all they do is yell. And so really, and then at the same time they want to know what curriculum can I use for my 3-year-old? And I go, really the curriculum right now is you. You have to be the one to work on you. And with that, that's one reason why I recommend our program, like our Thinking, Feeling, Willing program, because we really take you through how do you do these things? How do you, how do you get a hold of your rhythm? And that's not just family rhythm. In Waldorf, it's often people think, oh, well, rhythm is just about what day you're going to paint. It's not. That might be a big part of it in kindergarten. In the kindergarten, if you were in a school setting, but at home, rhythm has so many more things. So we really help you with learning how to hold a space and learning how to work on your time and your personal rhythm, your sleep rhythms. Those things are immensely important for early childhood. And so that's a really good time to start a program like ours, because then you're really understanding from the beginning. Because this early time it's really all about you and working on you and how you're going to be able to then go forward and face the challenges that you have ahead of you in parenting. And you really can't do that unless you sort of face some of your own demons. A lot of the moms that I work with, they say, I don't get it. I decided I wanted to be a different parent than my parents, and here I am yelling. And that is very much valid. I want to say that that's something that a lot of parents go through. But that if you can really work on yourself and work on being happy with yourself and work on looking at why you didn't like the way your parents parented, I think that that's a huge thing. You can't just go, it's because they spanked or it's because they yelled all the time. It's not just about that. So you have to sort of look at the bigger picture. And I really think that when we become parents, it is a call for us to understand and have greater appreciation for our own parents, even if we didn't have a great relationship with them. So, I know a lot of parents are newer parents, and they're trying to do everything completely opposite that their parents did. And I understand that. I understand that impulse. and I understand like making that friction and making those waves. But what I want to propose to you is that when you're doing that, I want you to also look at the circumstance. It takes a really balanced adult to stand back and look at the circumstance that their parents are maybe in, and the situations. And yes, we all had choices to make, and maybe they made really poor ones. But I think for me at least, it gives me a much bigger perspective and a much bigger appreciation for the life that my mother lived, and even my father. Even if I don't have a good relationship with my birth father, I can step back and look at, okay, where did his parenting come from? And it's not an excuse for sure, but it's definitely gives me some perspective on how and why some things were done in my childhood. It doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make it better, but it definitely gives you perspective. And that's really what a lot of this is. It's about looking at and gaining perspective, because then we can then frame how we're parenting based on where we've come from. So I want you to do that. If you've not ever really sat back and thought about those things and thought about those perspectives, I'm going to challenge you to do that as we're going through this series, because I think it is immensely important. So again, now let's talk about the 3-year-old. So we have a lot of things that happen in those first 3 years. So, at the beginning, they're really just sort of taking everything in that first year. They're new to this space. They're just come from the womb. They've just come from this spiritual space on the other side. And I very much believe that they really, their spirits came through that. So if you don't believe that, you might try a different channel. but definitely this is a Steiner, it's a Steiner belief. It's definitely a belief that I have, that we have, that we were we were in another place before we were here. And so here we're getting used to this space, and we sort of talk about, and Steiner talked about the young child being just sort of a sense organ. They are feeling everything, like from TV to video games to the seashells they find at the beach to everything. And so you see a lot of polarities in their behavior because they are taking it all in, and it can be incredibly overwhelming to them. So a lot of the tantrum kind of things that you see at ages 1 and 2 are from sheer overwhelm and frustration. And they're learning to walk, they're learning to talk. So a lot of those things that they're just taking in. So if they're having a bad day, it's because often they're hungry or they're tired, or that's the overs. They've been overstimulated. So you want to be really careful when you've got young ones to watch their stimulation. Now I'm going to say, we took kids to Comic-Con when they were teeny, but we made sure that when they were really small, they were in the sling, they were protected in a stroller that had, a facing around them, that they were allowed to retreat, and we gave them that space, and we took lots of breaks. And that can be really hard when you have older people and younger people in your family. But I always try to gear things around, especially when I'm planning to go someplace. I always try to gear things around, what are the needs of the youngest child? What do I need to be prepared for? Because in reality, if I can get dad to work with everybody else, I can focus on that younger child. So I make sure that I'm prepping dad so that then I can be in that space of, okay, this is what I need, this, and this for the younger child, to make sure that they are in a protected space. And so that goes for anything, even if it's not just an overstimulating event that you're going to, but even if you're just, going to the zoo or going to the park, you want to always sort of keep those things in mind. What can you do to make sure that the needs of the youngest piece there are taken care of? Now, if you've got, and a lot of us did, I know I did, if you've got children that are like, maybe you have a newborn and you have a 2-year-old and you have a 4-year-old, so which youngest child do you focus on? Well, then you have to focus on all of them. And I know that's exhausting, and I've been there. I've totally been there. When I see a young mom in the grocery store that's got stair steps like I did, I always walk up to her and pat her on the back and say, you're doing a good job. Because even if she feels like she's falling apart, she needs somebody to tell her she's doing a good job. That's a really hard time to be in, and I remember that time very, very, very vividly. So when you're working with with going on outings with very young children, just always try to keep the needs of the younger ones in mind, and that will help you immensely. I always carry snacks. Snacks are huge for for making sure that everybody's needs are met, because if somebody's having a fit or somebody's really upset, you can often distract them with, look, here's a granola bar, here's a piece of fruit leather. They can often be distracted by that, especially if they're a toddler. And while I recommend things like Sparkle Stories for older kids, they really aren't listening at 2 and 3, and so I wouldn't go ahead and purchase something like that for them. That's definitely for the older set, 4+. They're starting to really listen. So again, there's a lot of changes that happen in those first 2 years. They go from they learn to walk, they're learning to talk. So there's all this development that's happening, huge development, and it is causing them to have some meltdowns for sure. But then as they turn 3, there's like a consolidation of all this learning. And then they start to think a little more pictorially. They're starting to premeditate some things. They're starting to think ahead about some things. They're starting to really look at their surroundings around them, and they're starting to step away more than they used to, because the 2 is still very much a baby in a lot of ways, very much needs mom. But at 3, you're really seeing those first steps away from parents, that first need to see everything. And I like this. The article that I'm going to link is he said some things really, really interestingly and very vividly for me. He talked about being able, you've got this 3-year-old that can very much focus on their own thing and just imitating and doing. Then we step in there and we start talking. And so I thought it was really interesting. He was like, stop talking. Stop talking so much, because so what we do is we interrupt that flow of what, that imitation flow of what they're doing. And we should spend a lot of time just allowing and just being open and allowing them to follow us and allowing them to, rather than commenting on everything, which I know is like the disease of our generation, that we think we need to say something about everything. And we have to, and I have moms that say, well, I just have to walk her through it all day long. I go, no, you don't. Just do it and she'll follow you. And you don't have to walk them through. Some children, yes. In some instances, I'm going to say that because I'll have somebody say, well, you don't know my child. So I'm going to say some, yes. And that's going to be more of your higher needs kids usually that need a little more walking through. But even them, they don't need as many words as we give them. So really sort of try to check your words at the door, and don't be so much chit-chatty all the time when they're little, because we really sort of interrupt that flow. So often you will see they'll be working right alongside us, and we should just really be observing that and watching that and allowing that to unfold. So you have to be doing things that they can imitate. And that's what Steiner's quote's about, is about really being able to do things in your daily life that are purposeful and that are worthy of imitation. So what are they seeing you do? And I want you to really think about that. What are they seeing you do? Are they seeing you, do chores and work around the house? Those are good things for them to imitate. Are they seeing you fight with your partner? Not good. Always creates more conflict and fighting in the younger child. Always. Are they seeing you sit and watch TV or sit on Facebook or play with your phone? They're going to want to imitate that. If you've got a 3-year-old who keeps trying to take your phone away, hello, that's why. It's because they really want to do what you're doing. It's not because they're being naughty. They want to do what you're doing. I can remember when Soraya was about 3 or 2.5 going on 3, and we had just finished a revision of one of our books, so I had been on the computer a lot. And she didn't, in her early childhood, we were really careful to sort of not have her seeing me constantly on the computer, but she had found this old laptop that Ellie was playing with that didn't have a battery in it. And Soraya had set it up on the bed, was typing away, because she knew that's what adults did. That's what, that was totally what we did. So maybe 100 years ago, they'd be reading a newspaper or, something of the like. But we want to make sure that they are doing things that are that we're doing things that are worth them imitating. Let me look at a couple of comments. Very timely for me. My youngest just turned 3 last week, and he is such a different kid than my oldest. Both challenging. Yeah. I had a lot of challenges. I have 5, and so each of them had different sets of challenges at the 3-year marks. And you know, I think that the most pronounced ones, like I can remember some of the only tantrums that Sam ever had were like right around 3. He had a couple about 18 months, but those were like frustration tantrums. But then he had one that we always sort of laugh about. We call it the chunk tantrum. And it was this, Eric was walking from the front of the store to the back of the store because I don't remember where we were, but the toilet was in the back of the store. And the kid needed to use the bathroom, and Eric needed to use the bathroom. And so they had to walk through the toy section, of course. It was probably some Target place or something, through the toy section to get to the bathrooms. And Sam saw this toy called Chunk. I don't even know what that's from. And he screamed, "Chunk, I want Chunk." He's having a fit. Like, he never has fits like that. So we sort of can mark all of Sam's tantrums on one hand and then minus a few fingers. My other kids, on the other hand, wow, so different. So, you know, it's really funny to sort of step back as a parent and look at the temperaments of different children, especially as they're older then, and look at how they were at these 3-year marks. Again, some kids are super easy, some kids are super hard. Keep track of it because I think it's kind of fun. I think it's kind of a fun little, I would scrapbook about it or something, write about it, journal about it, so that you have perspective as they're later in life. So anyway, we're talking about the imitation part. We want to make sure that we're doing things that are worthy for them to imitate. So then what we see also is that when they have tantrums, it's often because they want to do something separate from us. So where before they might have been having a tantrum out of frustration, you know, they're trying to get a toy, or they're angry or upset about something. So that's usually like the 2-year-old, 1-year-old tantrum, 18 months to 2. What you see when they're 3 is often like, "Hey, I want to go that way, and you want to go this way, and I really want you to go that way." And so, and I really appreciated the author of the article that I'm going to share, because he said, not enough parents say no. It is okay for your child to have a tantrum. And I am just echoing that. It is okay for them to melt down. It is okay for you to go, "No, that can't happen right now. Es tut mir leid." It's something that we've been saying a lot. It is okay for them to have a meltdown. And you can say, "I'm sorry," and you can say it lovingly, but you don't need to be giving in, especially at this point. Now, if you wanted to go over there and you just were like, "Oh, okay, that sounds like a fun direction, let's go that way," great. But otherwise, you really ought to really be holding to, "That's not where we're going, I'm sorry," and gathering them in. We don't want to cave to everything that they want. And I see so many parents that really are struggling with that aspect of being a positive parent or an attached parent. Well, that means I have to let them do everything. No, it doesn't. And it doesn't mean that you need to beat yourself up for saying no. It means that you know when it's a no and it's a boundary, and then you walk on, and it is okay if they're having a fit. And man, I have carried some flailing 3-year-olds out of places. Whew, so much fun. And it happens, and you get through it, and you will be a better mom for saying no. You'll be a better mom for setting the boundary, and they will learn and they will understand. But those are some of the tantrums that we're seeing at 3. They're again wanting to walk away from us, and we're wanting to go in this other direction. And they're getting that bit of independence. You know, from the time they're born, we're raising them to walk away from us, which is kind of a little bit depressing. But at the same time, where I'm standing at the other end of it, where I have adult children, it's also fantastic and beautiful. So make sure that you're giving them that space to really go to that next place. So I'm going to read some different quote things here. Let's see. My oldest is super anxious and would literally freeze in terror around other kids. Now my little one is not only not afraid, but is kind of a bully. Oh, Megan. You know, and it's funny to sort of watch them be different. They're so different, and they're such a gift and such a blessing. And so we have to make sure that we remember that. And even when we're having a really hard day with our parenting, everybody has those days. You know, I have those days. I still have those days. And often it's because I didn't get enough sleep, or they didn't get enough sleep. And so there are times that I'm like, what time is it? What time is bedtime? Y'all are going to bed early. And so, you know, we're trying to get through things. And even when I try to get them in bed early, it still doesn't ever seem like it's early. It seems like I look at my watch or my phone when it's time to go to bed, and we're still at the same place that we were. But it's all good. You're sort of walking through and doing these motions, and really just working to be the best self that you can be. When you are in that best self place, they're in their best self place. And if they're not, you can handle their not best self a lot easier than you can when you're not your best self. So again, changes at 3. You've got these imitation things that we need to be careful not to interfere with. And we've also got these frustrations that they might be having because they want to do one thing and we're going another place. And we also have this ability for them to have this inner time. And so I want to make sure that I talk about that we want to allow them to have that quiet space because they are really thinking. They're thinking very pictorially at this time. Like I said, there's this consolidation of learning that they've had, and they're getting ready to jump into this next space of development. And so we can't fill all of their time with us talking or with something being on or with too many activities. Moms will say to me, oh, but my child is so social. I go, slow down, because even though they're social, they still need that quiet space. So if you're not doing daily quiet time, some 3-year-olds are still taking naps, and if they are, I think that's great. I would make sure that they're napping before 3 p.m., so maybe right after lunch, so that you can get them up at 3 so they can then have a good, appropriate bedtime. A lot of 3-year-olds have already given up a nap. Like my last 3 children all gave up naps by 3. And I was like, what the heck? Where Harry slept until he was like 7, he took a nap. Totally different child. But that just means that you have to be really good at bedtime. And there again, you have to be really good at catering your life to the youngest child and making sure that you are in a place where you can constantly be thinking about that. And that takes a lot of planning. So that might mean that you need to eat at 5. And that might mean, and I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, but that might mean you have to put kids to bed before Dad comes home. And I'm not meaning to ruffle feathers, but we sort of have this thought in our culture that we have to make sure that we cater to the needs of the parent, and we're not doing a good job if we're doing that. So you need to look at the needs of the child and what the child needs. And if the child needs to go to bed at 6:30 or 7 and Dad's not home yet, then you have to find another way to carve out time with Dad, because the child's needs for sleep have to come first. They have to. And if they're not, you're having more struggles than you need to. I really like Esther Hicks sort of says something about, and it's in relation to something else, but it sort of makes me laugh because it applies here, that we really as human beings allow ourselves to be much more uncomfortable than we need to be just because we refuse to do something. And so if we could get into that alignment space of I'm doing what's best for this child, so many things will fall into place for you and you will have a lot less tantruming. I'm going to read a couple more things here. Same situation here. Oh, this is Becca. She says, I know why my phlegmatic is also called the sleeping cleric. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, again, I want you to be thinking about those 3 things because I think they're immensely important. The inner life of the 3-year-old, and that means they need quiet time. They need that time to sort of think. And this is this is really kind of the first time in their development that they're really thinking. I mean, they've been doing some thinking when they were younger, 18 months to 2 for sure. Like, oh, there's that car over there. What do I need to do to go get that car? That kind of thinking. After that, they're thinking their world is opening to them. So it's a much broader space to them. They're seeing a lot more, and that's why you're seeing these tantrums, but that's also why you need that quiet inner space time. So really being able to take the time to back up and slow down. So the inner thinking space, you want to be not afraid to say no, even though they're going to have a tantrum if they want to go someplace and you don't want to go there. And you want to make sure that you have situations that are worthy of imitation. And so that goes also for bigger kids too, for if you've got older kids in the home and you've got a younger child. And this is a conversation that I constantly have with my teenagers. And thankfully I only have one at home right now to have that conversation with, but the conversation usually goes like this. I need you to be as obedient as I'd like them to be. So if you're fighting me, guess what? They're going to fight me because they think it's okay. So I won't be a good mom if I let you do X, Y, and Z that you want to do, because then they're going to want to do X, Y, and Z, and I don't want them to do that. So we have to have the set of rules that goes for everybody. Now, I can let you do other things, but we're not going to have a discussion about it in front of the 3-year-old or the 4-year-old or the 6-year-old. and so that really gets the older child, like the teenager, into a space of going, oh, wait a minute, what I do matters, because these little siblings of mine see. And I think that's immensely important. I think that you really have to be having these conversations with children. And then there's the conversations that I have with like the kids that are around somewhere between 9 and 13, when they go, oh, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. That book is upside down. You're doing it wrong. So then I have to remind them, nobody stole your magic and your joy when you were 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years old. So you need to stop stealing theirs. It's okay that they're doing it wrong. You're not going to turn that book right side up for them. For them, if they want to see the book upside down, they are welcome to. That's where they are right now. So I want you to make sure that you're okay having those conversations with your big kids, because I think those are important for the development of the family. Okay, let's see. Jason says, interesting point. I didn't ever have a good routine at home for sleep, but when you said it, yes, it does. It makes so much sense. It's talking about sleep here. And I think that, again, sleep is super, super important. So if you're watching this later and you wonder the comments are all below. So I had somebody send me a message the other day, why are you talking to people on the screen? Because people are talking to me. And so I'm talking back. So anyway, so those are the things that I want you to remember about the 3-year-old. We have some different things when we get to the 6-year-old next week. Some resources that I think are helpful. Again, you are your child's first teacher. I think Heaven on Earth is fairly helpful. There's not a ton in there about early childhood and Heaven on Earth, but there is like one chapter, I think, 1 or 2 chapters. And so if you have the book, pull it out and reread through that. I think that the Parenting Passageway is a great blog. She blogs a lot, and she has several things about the 3-year-old, or the 3-year-old, or the 3 and 6, the changes. She does have a lot of things, and I know Carrie, she's great. Again, Waldorf Online Library. So those are some amazing resources that I think are very important for this age that you were looking at, and actually for anything, especially the Waldorf Online Library. Oh my goodness. There's like so many great articles there. Just put in a keyword search and see what comes up. It's amazing. A lot of them written by anthroposophists or Waldorf teachers, so you have a good sort of Waldorf perspective on things. So let me read a few last comments. My 4-year-old is very social and is always wanting interaction. It almost feels like punishment to have daily quiet time or alone time for him, but he has been thriving. Yes, you must implement it. I know it seems like punishment, but you know what? It's okay for you to look at your child and say, I need you to stop talking. It's totally okay. I say that a lot to Soraya, because she is in a major, and she's 6, she's in a major talking place. Like, she's in the place that we're going to talk about next week. But it is okay for you to say, Mommy's ears need a break right now. I love you. Let's do something else. I'm going to set you up with this book here. I want you to go through the whole book, or I want you to, let's sit and do some handwork, and this is quiet activity. And it is okay to say that we need quiet time. They need that inner time. They really, really, really do need that inner time to really reflect, and that's what really helps them grow in a healthy way. So let's make sure that we give them that space and not try to fill it up with everything that our culture thinks that it needs to be filled up with. So anyway, I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you next week, and we'll talk about the 6-year-old. And if you need anything, drop me a PM. Otherwise, have a great day.